My Little Pony is known to address heavy topics very well. Among those topics are trauma, fears and loss. Perhaps the most notable example of that is Tanks for the Memories, where the metaphor of Tank going into hibernation is used to discuss the loss of a pet and in expansion, a loved one. It's the only discussion of death the show ever had. Maybe the perfect pair could count, but they didn't really discuss their loss and much more their love. But it worked well too. They show an amazing way for children to learn something about their late parents. I still hope they tackle something like that in G5 as well, with either Argyle, the unknown king of the Pegasi, Hitch's parents or Izzy's parents, maybe even Misty's parents. We have no idea if any of them are still alive, and we for sure haven't seen them, but to be fair, G4 took a while until we saw the parents of the main characters too, so I still have hope. Something that gets discussed more often than you'd think is trauma and relating issues. The most apparent one is the Tantibus. It's one of my favorite episodes for a reason. Luna's guilt was already discussed before in the comics, in the Nightmare Rarity storyline. Rarity gets taken over by the Nightmare Forces, who were the cause of Luna's transformation, and she feels responsible for it. But over the course of the story, she starts to accept it. And Ponyville's residents start to forgive her. This was only the start of her road, that was expanded on through the Tantibus and Luna Eclipsed. I still think the Tantibus was inspired by the Shadow Creatures and Shadow Force of that comic storyline. A big bad force getting Luna to break out of her shell and accept help. Both are connected to dreams and have the power to cause nightmares, for in this case, the main six. Many creatures already forgave her in episodes like Luna Eclipsed, but she hadn't forgiven herself yet. You are your own biggest critic. That is what makes forgiving yourself the hardest, but also the most important step. It helps you grow. She was still plagued by guilt. She blames herself and feels responsible for all of her mistakes, which definitely is correct. She let herself get corrupted, and like everyone who truly regrets what they did, she feels like she needs punishment. And the Tantibus is her way of enacting that punishment. I've seen it several times. It's perfect representation of how depression affects your state of mind. You take on the blame for anything that happens. Of course it's not that simple, there's more to it than that, and depression can have very different effects on each person. But the one I just described definitely is a facet of it. It's one of the most prominent trauma discussions in MLP for sure. Very similar to this one is the case of Midnight Sparkle. It shows many parallels. Same as Luna, she got corrupted by outside forces. Only that it was Principal Sinch headlining the operation. She was tempted by the power that was offered, and the slight outside push and unleash the magic was enough to get her over the edge and corrupt her. She turns into Midnight Sparkle. And I don't have to explain how that is a correlation to Nightmare Moon. And just like her, she caused a crisis in that form, and just like Luna, she had a hard time forgiving herself. But instead of guilt, she has more of a fear of her other form. She fears that even after being beaten, Midnight Sparkle is still inside of her. The Midnight in me. That's why I love the song so much. It perfectly shows how terrified she is of this power. This is a fear I understand more than you'd think. She is powerful, but she fears that she isn't able to control it. When she suddenly started to have these telepathic abilities, she was reminded of how she went on a riot the last time she acquired magic. And now, she fears to lose all control once more. This is actually why I love The Legend of Everfree. I'm no stranger to losing control, and the fear that you could go berserk and hurt people dear to you is no joke. I'm not bragging here, but I'm a fairly strong person, and had to deal with some strong anger issues in the past. And when you constantly worry about falling back and hurting someone, it's incredibly scary. I'm able to deal with it by now. Controlling anger is an ability that can be acquired. But back to Sidetry. She has the same worries. That's why the Midnight in me is such an amazing representation of that fear. How often did I say fear in this paragraph? I lost count. But you get my point. She got traumatized by the first time she got the magic. And once she got the new magic in The Legend of Everfree, she doesn't trust herself with it one bit. It's one of the best trauma representations I've seen. And for some reason, children's shows do that well so often. In The Lion Guard, Kion, the main character, has to deal with poison-induced anger issues and losing control of the strongest power the world knows. The War of the Elders. The entire last season is about him going on a journey to regain control. But before I get sidetracked babbling about another amazing show, let's talk about the last example I wanted to bring up. And I addressed it once before in the video 2 weeks ago. Because I'm talking about Ocellus. It's a different kind of trauma here though. Instead of the fear of losing control, it's the fear of losing yourself completely. The other two examples lose themselves too, but due to corruption. While Ocellus and likely more changelings could lose themselves due to identity struggle. Changelings are shapeshifters, so the possibility of not knowing what form their true form is all too apparent. We see that when she gets challenged by the tree. She gets turned into Chrysalis, showing the possibility and fear of falling back to the old changeling ways. And later, in Student Council, she is shown to transform into several different forms. She is struggling with exactly what I mentioned. She doesn't know who she really is. This is the most subtle of the examples I talked about, but definitely just as strong. And it's the only one I mentioned that isn't worked out completely in the show. And there are more of these in MLP G5, as well as G4, but I'm gonna wrap up this video here. Let me know if you want more videos like this, and tell me in the comments how you relate to some of the characters. Join my Discord if you want to discuss some more. Thanks to my patrons, especially to Maverick, and until next time, fellow bronies, fellas, and bye.